else. Well, it wasn't a good thing, because that followed me for many years. That change that came in me was something that I had to fight for years, and I still have to be careful. I stay in church, I stay close, I stay in the Word, I stay in prayer, because I know that if I don't, I could revert back to that, and I never want to see that monster. I don't want to see it. So anyway, I didn't believe in God. I really didn't. I even gave a report in school. I said, I gave this report and I said, that God is an invention of man to make him feel better and to make him think that he really has someplace to go when this is all over. And I said, to prove it, I'm gonna start a religion right here today in that class. And I said, and I'm going to say it's the Church of the Galapagos chicken, or the giant Galapagos chicken, or something like that. By the end of my little report, I had 13 converts. And I said, there, that proves my point. Well, I didn't know, and God is so gracious. He knows. I was in a sense mocking, but it's the only reason I was mocking is because I didn't know him. I didn't believe in him. I didn't think he existed. I was doing it very ignorantly. But he had a surprise for me, because I got married not too many years after that, and I got a job it was an apartment complex, and my boss, I was working with him, and he's constantly saying, hey, why don't you come to church with me some Sunday? And well, maybe, And of course, I'd never really intended. I had no intention of going. Why would you go to church? But one Sunday morning, I woke up, and all of a sudden, it was almost like I heard it. But it was like, man, you're not playing this very smart. You're kind of stupid. Because if you go, and this church was just a block and a half away, if you go down and he sees you in that church, it may be good for a raise. You could get some money out of this. Okay, I'm in. Now I'm in. So I got myself ready, and I hooked it down to that church. And I got in there, and I didn't know what time started. I was a little early, but the people were very friendly. They're so much different than the church I had gone to. They're very friendly. And everybody greeted, and I was in there, and I found me a spot close to the back. I wasn't going to get too close. I just wanted him to see me. I didn't want to, look like I was interested or anything like that. But anyway, people were coming in, and for some reason they would come over and introduce themselves and shake my hand, and I thought, well, that's different. I never had anyone in my church come over and introduce themselves. And they're the friendliest people. they were all talking and so friendly. And in the church that I went to, you sat there like this, and you didn't, if you coughed, people went, they were, if a baby just made a little squeak, everybody gives these turn around and give these evil eyes, like, get him to the nursery or something. This was the kind of church I was used to going to. But these people were so friendly. Anyway, I watched for my boss, and I didn't see him. And the church is filling up, and my boss is still not there. And I thought, well, should I get out of here? And then I thought, well, no, because he might come in late. Maybe he's. And so I waited, and all of a sudden the church started, and he's still not there. Well, I'm sitting there, I'm trapped. They started singing some music, and they sang songs like Jesus, Jesus. And this Jesus, Jesus. There's something about that name that's so special to me, because that was the day of my salvation. And these songs, the only songs I had heard were songs that were written, I think, in the 1500s or something. It was just this, and everything was this mellow tone. We were all German, so everybody was holy. I appreciate a lot of those songs now, but it was, and it was so slow, and it was like, and you fall asleep in between stanzas and stuff like that. But anyway, these people are just, and they're praising God, and they're singing these songs, and I thought, wow, this is so different. And there were some things that went on there that were amazing. I'm not going to tell you everything that I saw that day, but I was astonished And I was in awe of what is going on here. And then I got the idea. I thought, oh no, what if I accidentally came into one of those holy roller churches that people are talking about, and people are going to start rolling up the aisles or something, you know, this has been 45 years. I haven't seen anybody roll up the aisles yet, but I mean, I'm going, oh, what if this is one of those churches? Anyway, I don't remember much of what the message was that night, but all of a sudden, there was an invitation. And I had never heard of being born again. In that church, I'd gone to church my whole life, never heard about being born again. I had never heard of an altar call. I had never heard of giving your life to the Lord, accepting Jesus as your Savior, and gone to church all my life. So, when that invitation came, all of a sudden, from the top of my head to the tip of my toes, from the tips of my fingers to the tips of my fingers, this electricity started just searing through me, back and forth and up. I mean, it was an electricity. And why God did it this way, I don't know. Maybe He knew that I was one of those that, if you want me to believe, show me. Well, it just seared. I mean, this electricity was just flowing through me. And I mean, and all of a sudden, this light came on. And I knew that God was real. Did you ever see that commercial where Santa Claus and the big M&M guys, they meet each other and go, you really are real. You know, and you go, oh, you really are? Yeah, that's what it was. It was like, God, you really are real. And I ran up to that altar. I was the very first one up there. I mean, I ran and I just poured out my life. And I'm just crying. And just... It was just amazing. And then I walked home, and I mean, I know I didn't, but I could see myself about that far off the ground as I was going back home. I mean, I was just floating because I had just discovered God. Jesus had introduced me to God by way of the Holy Spirit. Well, this would have been just a wonderful thing, except very quickly after that, we ended up moving from there to Wyoming, to a little bitty Mormon town in Wyoming. And there was no church around there similar to this. But there was something there that I didn't need. Well, now, I thought I needed it because it was everything I like to do. It was hunting and fishing and arrowhead hunting and dinosaur bone hunting. I mean, this was just, it was so different than Wisconsin. I mean, it was everything I wanted to do. And then, of course, I was working, at that time, they couldn't hardly get enough workers, so I was working 12 hours a day, and sometimes they'd keep me 16 hours. So all my activities surrounded around working or else hunting and fishing and doing all these other things that I like to do. And they took the place of what should have been my growth in the Lord. And I didn't get right back. But I still, I didn't forget this. I would work with some of the Mormon boys, and they try to tell me something about the church, and I would tell them, I say, well, I don't know about that. I said, all I know is one day I walked into this church, and the Spirit of God came on me, and and I'd tell them what I knew. That's all I knew. And I tried to get into reading the Bible, but I didn't even know where to start. I tried in the Old Testament, starting from the beginning. And it just wasn't making any sense to me. And I didn't know you could skip in this book. I thought you had to read it all. I didn't know you could skip around. I had no idea. So anyway, what had happened was, the toll of this is after about 5 years, my wife and I, we were just not getting along too well. I became very selfish because I wanted my time, and she wanted her time too, and we had 3 children by that time, and I was being selfish, and I don't know that she was being selfish, but she wanted some time too. And anyway, there was a rift, and I would, even though I'd come home from work and I'd say, I am not going to fight with my wife when I get home, I would be in that house 5 minutes and we'd be fighting, and like I said, that orneriness of me that I took out on my mother that day, I wasn't like that all the time, but boy, if I got my toes stepped on, whoa, I would blow up. I would find that same person coming out again. And my poor wife had to suffer with that. And I didn't know how to contain that, because I had let a beast out and it was pursuing me. And my poor wife and my poor children had to listen to me throwing tantrums. That's basically what I was doing, throwing tantrums, being selfish. Well, it made a toll on our marriage, and she finally got tired of it, and she said, I can't take it no more. And we ended up splitting up. Well, I was afraid she was going to try to take the children. So what did I do? I took off with the children. I took them down to Florida. I ended up in Florida. And then, all of a sudden, I think, oh, it's time for me to start looking for the Lord again, you know. I mean, and when I went down there, I made a commitment. I said, Lord, I'm going to give you hunting. I'm going to give you fishing. I'm going to give you fossil. I'm going to give you these things, Lord, that were taking up all my time. I'm going to give them away because I want to find out who you are. Well, I started going to this church, and it was a beautiful little church, and it was at a time in the 70s where the Spirit of God was just moving in church, and we were seeing miraculous things, miracles, people, I mean, amazing things. And I was sitting in the back of the church with my 3 children, and I'm not feeling anything. I'm feeling dead. I want to, and I remember, and I want that back again, but I'm feeling nothing. And finally I went to go do some work on the church, some painting and stuff, and I got off with the pastor, and I told him, I said, you know what, I just think God has deserted me. He doesn't want anything to do with me. And I don't blame him, but I just don't feel anything anymore. And he tried to explain to me about salvation and how you just don't lose salvation by turning your back on God, you know. But it just didn't register too much. Anyway, there was a revival that was scheduled for that next week. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go to the revival and see if something... And I was actually getting mad at everybody who was happy. They're all up there just enjoying the Lord, and they're happy and testifying. And I'm sitting back there thinking, boy, I wish the ceiling would fall on them, because I'm mad, you know. I was like... But anyway, the revival started, and they're talking, some of these people are giving testimony. There was a guy who was healed of multiple kinds of cancer, and he had gotten down to 1/4 of a lung, 1/2 of one side of a lung, and they were going to operate on him, and when they were going to operate on him, he died right there on the operating table. Well, they didn't even get to open him yet. He died before as they were trying to put him under. Well, he told the story about when he did, the whole ceiling turned into like a projector type thing. I mean, he saw the Lord. I mean, there was the Lord right in front of him. And the Lord told him, he said, I'm going to start restoring you, and I'm going to do it step by step. It's not going to be all at once. It's going to be step by step. And you're going to go through these operations, and I'll tell you when you should and when you shouldn't accept an operation. Well, when he came, and he says, I'm going to start by giving you a new set of lungs. Now, when he came, they had put him away. They had actually covered him up, and they put him away. And then all of a sudden, he came back. And then when he came back, he hadn't eaten for a long time. They were feeding him by tubes and stuff. And the first thing he said was, I'm hungry. I want something to eat. And he said, well, you can't eat. You're not able to eat. He says, yeah, I want something to eat. So they humored him. And then the next day when the doctor came in, he said, well, it looks like you're strong enough. We're going to have that operation for your lungs. And he said, I don't need it. I have a new set of lungs. You know, of course, doctor, you know. You're not going to believe that. And so they said, yeah, okay. He said, no, seriously. You know, take some x-rays. And they did. They took some x-rays, and there is a complete set of lungs. That's the way God started. He went operation by operation. Every day they asked him, do we operate? I mean, the doctors eventually got used to it. Say, hey, we don't, or we do, or whatever. And to where the doctor was actually sticking his head in and said, do we do it today? And he'd say yes or no. And every operation that he had, and he had 100 and some operations, because a lot of the cancer was on the outside and it had eaten him all up. He had 100 and some operations. Every one of them 100% successful. Then he got down to the very last one. He had this little spot underneath his lip, and that's all that was left. And that day he prayed to God and he said, do I? And God said no. Now he was so eager, even after 100 and some operations, he was so eager that when the doctor poked his head in that day, he said, do we? And he thought, well, that's so minor. He thought for himself. He got his own mind involved. He said, that's such a minor thing. And I went through all these other, and it was so sad. He said, yes, that was the only operation that didn't work. And he had a big scar there. And he said, you know what? I could have that removed. He said, but I will not have it removed because I want that to remind me that God is sovereign and that His will is what I want in my life. Anyway, there was a gal who had a baseball-sized tumor in her head, and God had removed it. There was a gal who was told not to go to work one day, and 3 times she had to be told. And finally she gave in and she said, okay, I won't go. That day there was such a rain down in Florida that the roof fell in and killed the person in her desk that took her place. There was a gal who was told it was impossible for her to have a baby. But one day she heard on the 700 Club that someone out there has got a baby or going to have a baby, and you're so far along and everything. And she just knew. She all of a sudden she knew that was her. And she went to her doctor and she said, I'm going to have a baby. He said, you know it's not possible. I'm going to have a baby. Okay, well, we'll test you, but you know it's not. And well, of course, she was tested. She had the baby. I mean, she was pregnant, and she was exactly as pregnant as they had announced that she was on the 700 Club. Anyway, these are the kind of testimonies I'm listening to, and I'm still sitting back there. You know, I'm just. Finally, I look over at the pastor's. He's leaning up against the wall, and one gal's the one with the brain tumor. That had the brain tumor, she was giving her testimony, and he's over there on the side of the wall, and he's leaning there. He looks at me and goes, and I'm hoping he's pointing to someone else, you know. But he goes again, you know, and I'm kind of ignoring him, you know, and he's like this. And finally I thought, well, he's not going to stop, and everybody's looking back at me, so I might as well. And I walked over there, and he says, when she's done, I want you to go up there, and I want you to tell him what's happening with you, how you feel, and you know. And I thought, well, no, I just don't know what to say. He says, no, I want you to go ahead and do this. And I said, okay, okay, I guess, but, well, and we're still talking, and as we're talking, this gal got done, and she came over, and she just stuck the mic in my hand like she knew I'm supposed to talk next. And I said, like, you know, so here I am. And he says, come on, go ahead and do it. And I go, I just don't know. Just go ahead. And then the pastor did something that pastors aren't supposed to do. He shoved me right towards the podium. He shoved me out there. So here the momentum's going. So here I am heading out there, and I get up there, and I mean it's a packed house. The Spirit of God is moving, and people are coming from everywhere. They didn't even know why they were there, but it's loaded. And I start kind of stammering, you know, I feel this way, and I don't think God wants anything to do with me or anything, and I really got nothing to say. And I looked over at him again, and he goes, well, tell him the devil's a liar. And I thought, well, now that's the stupidest thing I ever heard, you know? And I thought, well, I guess it can't hurt. I said, well, I think the devil's and I stopped, and I went, no, the devil is a liar. All of a sudden, from the top of my head to the tips of my toes, from the tips of my fingers to the tips of my fingers, this electricity started shooting through me. And the light came on again, and I jumped off the podium, and it was a split seats, and I'm going down the middle, and I'm kind of dancing, I'm shaking people's hands. The devil's a liar, the devil. I mean, the light came on again, and I'm just like, and I was so excited. Now, as soon as that service is over, I had to go back and get ready and go to work. I worked in a prison, and on the way to work, I'm saying, Lord, please put me on the outside of the prison because I can't contain what you've just given me inside. I need some space and some time, and He did. I got assigned to the outside, and it was by the time I got there, it was about 11 o'clock, and I'm there all by myself out in the corner, and it's dark. I mean, it's nighttime, and I'm out there praising, and